Right. Well, I think we'll start. Good afternoon again, everyone. My name is Adam Jase. I'm Deputy Editor at Visegrad Insight. It is a great pleasure to have you all on the call. This is our last of the State of Slovakia series we're running this week in the run-up to the Slovak elections. Today we're going to be talking about Slovak media and society. We're very grateful to all the subscribers who join and who register and support our activities. We will have a similar series of State of Poland events in the run-up to the Polish election, which is, as you all know very well, coming right behind the Slovak election. Um, in the second week of October, our subscribers will receive invitations earlier, of course, to this series. And those of you who are not yet subscribers, I encourage you to become subscribers and also support our work and be able to join events like this. I'm delighted that we have two excellent speakers today. Michaela Terenciani, who is a foreign desk head at SME Daily, and Rastislav Kaczmar, who is editor and reporter at the Slovak daily Dennik N. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Right. So the game plan for today is that we will have a 30-minute discussion, which is recorded and which is going to be available on our website later on. And the following 30 minutes will be an off-the-record discussion, mostly for you to ask our speakers your questions and follow-up questions to what is discussed in the first part. And that is going to be off the record and not recorded. So I guess we can start. So what I would like to start with is to ask Michaela to tell us, because this has been a very long campaign in Slovakia this time around, because the early elections were declared in January, and effectively from there the parties started to campaign, and it has become pretty brutal, that campaign, at least verbally, although we saw some fistfights as well in the last week. So it's become quite tense. And my question to you is, what effect has it had on the Slovak society?
So yeah, it's you're right in saying that it was a long and quite brutal campaign especially in this last week. As you correctly pointed out, I think we haven't had fistfights in elections in a really long time. I think the last time we remember something like that was under Vladimir Mečiar in the 90s. So yeah, in that sense, it's quite unprecedented. But it was also the fact that most of the campaign took part in the summer months when people were on holidays, also politicians were on holidays, also meant that it was rather slow. I think that many of us, many journalists, expected a little bit more dynamic campaign, maybe a little bit more heated debate on some issues, on some substantial issues, like foreign policy maybe. And instead, that hasn't really happened. It was kind of dormant, and only in these past few weeks we saw some spikes in the debate, but it was mostly agenda setting by Robert Fico, unfortunately. So probably I will get to that later, but the mood in the country that I would like to point out to people who aren't present here is mainly one of resignation, in my opinion. And I think it's understandable and probably not uncommon in Europe after the pandemic. The toll of the war in Ukraine. People are tired. People are sort of discouraged from following politics at all. So we are struggling with that as well in the media to capture people's attention and to convince them that it's important to pay attention. to politics, and and there is a general sense of disappointment and yeah, resignation, in my opinion. And one theme that I would point out to exemplify that is something that I repeatedly mention in talks like this, that it's kind of common for people to talk about how they are going to leave Slovakia if things don't go well. So this is like a very recurring topic in conversations. Also, like you meet your friends and people are joking, you know, saying like, "So have you bought your flight tickets for the 1st of October?" Things like that. And I have to say, personally, I quite resent that. I think that's a kind of betrays some kind of defeatism that is not really constructive, I would say. But I think it's quite overwhelming um, among the public. Um, so we will see whether that shows also in the people's attitude to the actual voting, how many people turn out. The predictions of the turnout are quite unfavorable, although in the past polls, in the past series of polls in September, we saw that that the willingness of people to go and vote was a little bit increased to about 60%, which is quite good for Slovakia. So yeah, we will see. Another thing, just one more thing that I would like to open up for discussion is that when this election was announced, so when finally the political scene somehow came to the conclusion that we are going to now have the early elections, was that it was going to be about the foreign policy orientation of Slovakia and really the future of Slovakia, um, um, given the example of its foreign policy. But it's I don't feel like that has really materialized. So at the beginning, it was used by the democratic parties or the pro-democratic. I mean, that's not a very good term, but that's how we tend to call them, the pro-Western parties, let's say. And they were talking about the difficulty that the return of Robert Fico could mean for Slovakia and for its alliances in the West. But right now, as we are nearing the end of the campaign, it seems much more than this topic was hijacked by the other side of the political spectrum. So it's mostly Smer that is campaigning on the exactly opposite emotion, you know, and really making it big and amplifying these narratives of the pro-Kremlin propaganda that we should no longer support Ukraine, we shouldn't be sending military aid or any type of aid whatsoever, even that the war is something that the West is to be blamed for or was provoked by Ukraine or the West. So all these things are somehow resonating at the election meetings of Smer party particularly, but also some other parties. And that's partly the reason how Smer is maintaining the popularity, and there is some kind of it's sort of like a vicious circle, because many people are very responsive to that, but at the same time this attitude is reinforced in the Slovak public when influential politicians keep repeating it. So right now about half of all Slovaks believe that Slovakia shouldn't be sending any military aid to Ukraine, which is quite a big number. And I have
Right.
some other issues that I would love to mention, but I will leave it to this for the
Okay,
moment.
I'm sure they will come up later in the discussion. Thank you very much for this introduction. Well, you know, the question of Mr. Fico's potential return to the government has obviously dominated coverage in Slovakia, but also internationally. There has been a lot of focus on the issues you mentioned, namely, how does that influence? How will that potentially influence Slovakia's alliances, its attitude to helping Ukraine and European unity? On this, but it seems to me that at the same time, Mr. Fico has increased his following in the run up to the election by focusing on some of the economic hardships issues. You know, real wages, cost of living, inflation, and so on and so forth. So my question to you, Ratislav, is, uh, what dominates the discussion, the agenda at the moment? And also, I'd like you to comment on the fact that Mr. Fico refused to take part in any debates, with his opponents, which is which is a sort of populist trend, if you will, because Donald Trump refuses to enter debates with his Republican rivals. Jarosław Kaczynski in Poland is also refusing to debate his opponents, and obviously, so they're all following the same playbook.
Thank you for the question. So I'll start with the debates. Just a small correction that he refused to go to television Markiza, which is the most influential television in Slovakia.
Okay.
And it's a private television. And they are the most critical of those that are, let's say, organizing the debates. He is planning to go to the public television because he knows that there will be maybe a better discussion for him, less challenging. So he is going to talk to debate with his opponents, but he picks he's deciding to pick his own battles because he knows that he needs to be presenting himself in the way he wants. And why he does that? I think the answer is simple. He has his own channels. Nowadays, he is not. It's not so important to be in all of the debates because he is the most popular politician on Slovak Facebook. Smer is the most popular party on TikTok. So they're also aiming for young voters. And that means that he can talk the way he wants, and he can just aim at all of the people without going to television. And he doesn't have to face critical questions doing it. The other thing is that TV Markiza, which I mentioned, in past has they did some investigation on Fico, and he knows that maybe when he comes there, there will be a more hostile environment. And all of this points to a situation in the media in Slovakia that we all know that landscape has changed. Disinformation media is more important than it was in the past. Now it's normal for politicians like Fico, who is a former prime minister, to be doing interviews in media which are pro-Russian, which publicize hoaxes every day. So it's just it's the same thing that Trump does, and also for him, he's trying to avoid confrontation with the leader of the party Progresivne Slovensko, because he knows that he's the main challenger. If you have seen the polls, then you know that Progresivne Slovensko is basically the only party that can beat Smer. And if he can avoid being with him in one discussion, then it's better for him because he will not be challenged by Šimečka, by the leader of the party, and he will not have the opportunity to present himself as the opposite to Fico. The other question, his statements and his narratives. I think that Fico is a very experienced politician who knows how to use more narratives. So he talks about Ukraine a lot. He knows that there are many pro-Russian voters who want to hear that. We can see in the polls that 45% of people think that Ukraine should give up Crimea and territories in the eastern part of the country if it means that the war will stop. And he's exploiting that. He's talking to those people. And that resonates also in the other countries. But as you said, in our domestic political environment, he's also using other narratives and basically talking a lot about the economic hardships and how people have suffered. He's talking about inflation. He's talking about expensive food and about economic crisis. And that's a position he's always been strong in because he's branding himself as a social democrat. In the past, he has been giving a lot of money to people. So he knows that that's the field where he's strong. And also he knows how to present simple solutions to complicated problems, even though he will not solve them. It's something that populists do. And the other thing, I think that might be an explanation of why he is in such a strong position, is the fact that he's working. He's working every day. If you are working in a media in Slovakia, you can see it. He's putting so much effort into this campaign. I think it's like, if you count all the other parties together, they're not doing as much as he is. Every day he has a press briefing. Every day he is meeting people. Every day he has a video on Facebook or TikTok, and he knows he's good at doing this. So I think he's a politician by his heart. So that's the real reason. In the summer, as Michaela said, you could see that many politicians were taking break. They were doing some stuff just to be seen, from time to time. But Fico was working every day. Even from vacation, he was sending press releases, and you could see him on the bench sitting in his hotel and doing videos and talking about inflation in Slovakia. So he's just putting so much effort because he knows that it's the critical election for him.
Right. Well, thank you.
Sorry, Adam.
I have a yes.
If I could just remark something on the Fico's avoidance of debates, just one thing.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. I think that it's also a message in itself. I think that it just shows. It's also meant to show something to his voters. Like, he's refusing this media. He's basically discounting this media from his debate with voters, and essentially what he's doing, he's already showing how it would be if he was to become prime minister again, very much in the footsteps of Viktor Orban. So I think that this is also a way to understand his refusal of going on a certain media.
Right. Thank you very much. This is actually a very good prompt for my next question to both of you, and maybe Michaela, you can start, and then Rastislav can follow. But my question to you is, a lot of questions we get and a lot of interest we hear is about how serious Fico's return really would be for Slovakia and for Europe and for Ukraine, because some people are saying exactly just as you formulated it, that he's going to move Slovakia more towards the Orban position on foreign policy, but also in terms of democracy and autocratic forms of governing. But we have also heard voices, and Mr. Fico himself seems to try to reassure foreign investors and some diplomats, saying, oh, this harsh rhetoric, all these things I'm saying, these are for domestic consumption. And once the elections are over, the dust will settle and you will see that I'm a pragmatic man. To what extent do you believe this is true? Or to what extent he has changed so much over the last few years when he was in opposition that he's indeed going to follow in Mr. Orban's footsteps?
Yes, so this is a very frequent question, and I have no doubt that Robert Fico means the things that he's saying. So obviously he's trying to reassure the foreign community and the foreign investors, because this is going to be the economy that he will have to be working with if he is governing the country again. But I have no doubt that that he would really live up to the hints that he has made even throughout this campaign, that Viktor Orban is really his the example of a regime that he would like to impose in Slovakia. And I think that it's for a simple reason, because he has no other choice. This is more like the reason why Robert Fico needs to be in power is also to get back control of the police and the criminal prosecution bodies in general, the justice system. because he is really facing some consequences of the criminal past of his government, and basically once he gets to power, he will see no other choice for him than just to keep that power by any means. And the easiest thing to do is to simply repeat what Viktor Orban has already done in Hungary, and it would be possible in Slovakia. Maybe it would be even faster than the many years that it took in Hungary. So
So you're
yeah.
becoming as pessimistic as some of these people you were talking about at the beginning.
I'm trying not to be pessimistic, because I still think that it's I still think it's I have a lot of faith in the Slovak people that their sense of justice somehow will prevail, and that they will turn out to vote like they did in '98. And I mean, we talk about this election as the most important election Slovakia has ever seen, or I don't know, or the most important in the last 20 years. But we say that about every election that we hold here, and it's true for every election that is very important. And in those, every time Slovakia was at the crossroad, the people somehow managed to choose the right side, and I just hope that this is going to happen as well. But if Fico makes it, I am quite pessimistic. Yes.
Right. Over to you, Rastislav. If I may, I would just throw in two small things. One is, isn't Fico going to be constrained by the fact that he will most likely have to enter a coalition government? That's one. And the second, just as Mihaela said, there will be these economic limitations. So, is that not going to put some curbs on Mr. Fico's potential freedom of maneuver?
Unfortunately, I agree with Mihaela, and I think that a word that Fico has mentioned a lot is very important. That's a word revenge. He wants revenge because he thinks that there was this unwritten rule in the past in Slovakia that you do not prosecute politicians who in the past have done something. That has happened with, Mikuláš Dzurinda. His government also has some scandals, but they are already forgotten. In Mečiar, we don't even have to talk about it. But there was this rule that if you don't need to, you will not open things from the past. And that rule is completely shattered right now. We have so many prosecutions of people who were close to Robert Fico that he needs to do something. If he wants to maintain his position as the most important politician, or as the most important figure in this scheme of people who are getting money from the state, he has to do something. He has to help those who are in the jail, who are standing in front of the court. And in order to do that, he has to change the laws. He has to change the people in the highest positions. So I think he will do everything he can. I think that maybe not in such a aggressive way, because he is too experienced to just start destroying everything 1 week after he becomes prime minister, or if he's not a prime minister, only he's in the government 1 week after he forms the government. But I think that slowly he will try to adapt many solutions, if you might call it solutions, from Hungary. He's already talking about non-governmental organizations. He's already talking about our allies who are not behaving the way he thinks they should. So I think that he will have a very strong inspiration from Orban. And already in the campaign, Peter Szijjártó, Hungarian foreign minister, supported him by saying that these investigations of people who are on the candidate list of Smer are not good. So another persecution so that's like a declaration of future cooperation between Orban and Fico's government. But I also think that it's in some way it depends on the coalition. But right now, I think we don't have good options when it comes to coalition with Smer, because you have either Hlas, which are former members of the Smer party, led by Peter Pellegrini, who would like to be a more sophisticated pro-Western politician. But in his own party, majority of people are for the government with Smer. We now know that majority of those who are in the leadership of the party don't want to enter a government with Progresívne Slovensko, which means that if there is an opportunity for Fico to form a government with Hlas, he will have quite easy work persuading those people to join him. And then there is Slovak National Party, which is openly pro-Russian. In fact, it's the most pro-Russian party in Slovakia. Its leader is talking about establishing relations with Vladimir Putin and how Ukraine is responsible for the war. So I'm not seeing like the best case scenario for government with Smer is that you have either Christian Democratic Party in it, but Christian Democratic Party doesn't want to govern with Fico now officially, or then you have Smer Rodina, which is a populist right-wing party, because those are parties who maybe would a little bit slow him down if they also cooperate with Hlas. But if Fico is the strongest and he has a Slovak National Party also in the coalition, then I don't think there's a good future for Slovakia, at least for the next 4 years. And talking about how people might react to that, I'm also a little bit pessimistic, because I think that after the big demonstrations, after the murder of Jan Kuciak and Martina Kushnirova, a lot of people are, I wouldn't say depressed, but they're demotivated. Yes. Because then it changed the situation. Robert Fico had to go. We had the new government, but it only brought chaos. Then we had two crises. We had pandemic. We have war against Ukraine, and a lot of people are tired, disillusioned. And even before this election, which is a very important election, you don't see a big mobilization. At least I don't see it. It's like parties are trying to do something. There are small non-governmental initiatives, but it's not a big campaign that would try to persuade everyone to go out and vote. I think that in '98 it was around 80% of people voting, and now probably we will have something between 50 and 60%. So that also shows the difference between those two elections.
Thank you very much for these comments. I have the last question for this official part, and then we will go into the off-the-record session. And my question is about the role of the media in all of this, in terms of, how successful or how how badly have the Slovak media in general managed the question of sort of putting policy issues at the forefront of the campaigning. In other words, it seems to me that Slovakia is facing some serious challenges, particularly on the economic front. And as you rightly pointed out, Erstislav, some of these solutions that Mr. Fico and others are offering is politics without policy, actually. So have the media been able or trying to pierce that battle and actually focus voters' attention on real issues? And where does it stand?
I can start.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's time to be a little bit self-critical right now, but certainly the public debate ahead of this election, now 10 days or what is it before the election, is not really saturated with policy issues. And I'm not sure if that's because of the lack of trying among the media. The fact is that many of the parties running in the election and many of the high profile parties don't even have election programs anymore. You know, maybe just some slogans or some like set of beliefs or some such. And I think that the media are like commentators, but also reporters from different beats are trying to point to the you know the problematic healthcare in Slovakia, for example, the education system, and also the economic issues, obviously. But somehow these things appear to me as disconnected from the campaign discourse sometimes. And when it comes to the campaign, the media is often um, forced to be reactive. So when I was mentioning the Fico's agenda setting skills, he has shown that with the migration, with the illegal migrants in Slovakia. So it really was like, it was a failure, but not a major failure, but nevertheless a failure of the current like caretaker government to handle all the people crossing the border from Hungary. And then Fico just, you know, traveled to Velký Krtiš, to the town at the border, you know, showed a campaign with some facility, dilapidated facility with some obviously foreign people in the background. And then the media somehow just needed to react to that and to go there and report. So I'm probably not going to give a very clear answer of whether the media has failed, but I feel like we are having difficulties to get our voices heard in the competition of also disinformation media and on the social networks. Like media has become, you know, like a big national daily on Facebook is just another profile on Facebook competing with a random like neo-Nazi from based in London, you know. So it's there are now these limitations for us as well.
Thank you. Rastislav, please, if you want to add anything to this.
I would just say that we try to set the agenda, we try to talk about the policy issues, but the fact is that politicians, most of them don't want to talk about it, and it's like it's easier for them to talk about campaign models and easier to talk about issues they want to talk. So and you also have to react, as Michaela said. For example, last week when there was this fight between former prime minister and former minister of interior, maybe it would be the best solution to not cover it, but you have to do it because people want to know about it, they want to read about it, and if you don't have anything about it, then you are also giving the floor to those disinformation media to interpret the situation in their own way. And that's also the case with migration. You have to react, even though it may be not a big problem, but you have to write an article debunking the things that Fico said. And in this case, you are basically promoting his own narrative because you are mentioning it. And it opens another debate and another debate, and he gets what he wants. But that's the way that it functions today, because that's the landscape of media, I would say. And also with social media, it has changed. As Michaela said, his name is Danny Kolar. He's internet aggressor based in London, and Robert Fico is going to he's doing interviews with him on his YouTube channel, and he's legitimizing him. So what can you do? You have to react. You have to say that he is an internet aggressor, and then you are also talking about someone who you wouldn't talk about normally. So I think maybe if something we could have done differently, then there is the issue of talking about who will form coalition with whom after the election. I think that a lot of questions for politicians are you going to cooperate with this party? Are you going to cooperate with this party? And then you are just putting yourself into long discussions which will not lead anywhere, because they will tell one thing, but after the election they can do something else. So I know from my own experience that in the last 3 or 4 weeks we have written a lot of articles about important issues, and we tried to cover them very deeply, but most of the parties haven't even answered our questions. So how can you set the debate if you write about inflation, you write about poverty in Slovakia, you write about problems with the healthcare, and you send the questions to all of the parties, and 3 of them will answer?
Yeah, I can actually confirm that's exactly what happened with us. We had a big survey where parties could list their policy proposals on various issues, and many of them didn't answer. And I think just wanted to add to that that as a newspaper or as a television, you can talk about the policy issues as much as you want, but you cannot really force, like in this media landscape, you cannot really force the politicians to actually go for policy, because people are not really going for that, right? Like the vote is based so much on emotion that it's just the politicians know that it's not going to win them election if they have like a super cool program, really well argued and everything. And even though Slovakia has had experience with Igor Matovic, who won an election without any real program, without any real policy proposals, and we saw what it means when a person like that is in power. But I don't think it has changed people's attitude to how to choose my election favorite. So.
Right. Well, guys, it all sounds very gloomy, but let's take a break then. Thank you very much for your comments. And now I would like to